Welcome to PRZ Soccer's European Football Show. I'm your host, Patrick Mullen, joined by Blair Malloy as we are on the road once again. This time we are still in Manchester thanks to Storm AO win. As you can see behind us, Old Trafford, the host of last night's brilliant game between Manchester United and Rangers. And before we get into the football, Blair, how have you found your trip in Manchester so far?
Yep, slightly extended, Patrick, but what a better time to bring the European Football Show on the road, especially with some massive results for both Manchester sides this week, which I'm certain we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we'll kick off with the game last night. Heartbreak for Rangers. That goal from Cyriel Dessers. First of all, what a great finish for him, and how, Philippe Clement spoke about it after the game, how disappointed he'll be not to be that hero. They just got to defend Rangers right to the very end.
Yeah, talking to a lot of Rangers fans down here, I think it was extremely disappointing last night that the draw was within the grasp of Rangers and they just couldn't quite see out those last few minutes. Cyriel Dessers, he came on. We were watching at the match last night at Old Trafford. We were saying he has to bring Cyriel Dessers on. He has to have a bit of extra going up front. Hamza Eggman, when he was on the park, he wasn't really getting chances. He was struggling to hold the ball up, but Rangers were really struggling to get forward into that final third. When Cyriel Dessers came on the park, he made a marked difference, and what an incredible finish. I almost feel for Cyriel Dessers this year. He can never quite get that big moment, but there's been a lot of speculation about Cyriel Dessers' future, whether he'll be at Rangers come the end of this window, whether he'll be at Rangers come the end of this season. But I think last night truly showed what he could do.
You mentioned that you feel for Cyriel Dessers. You're not the only one. We spoke to Philippe Clement after the game, and well, here's what he had to say.
Yeah, of course, because he did really well, and he showed again his great mentality. What he showed for every second that I've been in the building, I never saw a different Cyriel in any circumstances. So of course you score a very good goal, and then you see that it's not the decisive one. Otherwise he would have been the hero, and we spoke about that. People could become heroes today, so he was really close to become a hero.
Yeah, Philippe Clement there talking about his number 9. That's 13 goals so far for the season, and I think 33 appearances, so not a bad return by any stretch by Cyriel Dessers. He's an enigma of a striker, Patrick. Sometimes he can't do it in the Scottish Premiership, but on the biggest stage, as we've seen last night, he can produce some excellent moments.
I don't think it was Manchester United's almost best performance of the season. I thought it actually was almost two teams not playing at their very best, but in these big games, in the Europa League, you've just got to go out there, grind a result. But for Rangers, I think a big problem for them now, Blair, is this injuries. You saw it again. I think it was 3 more last night. They've got a big problem mounting up.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the key stories from last night. One of the key takeaways is the mounting injury crisis once again at Rangers. James Tavernier had to fill in at centre-back last night from half-time. We were quite surprised at half-time when Leon Balogun and Conor Barron both went off, obviously due to injuries. We've seen Leon Balogun limping, potentially Conor Barron, I heard, left the stadium on crutches last night as well. So Leon Balogun going off, James Tavernier taking his place, as well coming onto the park. 2 youngsters filling out the team for Rangers. Finlay Curtis on the right hand side and Bailey Rice in the middle. Bailey Rice did get a lot of impressions last night, a lot of people talking about him. Rio Ferdinand, I know, on TNT commentary, was particularly impressed by the youngster. He played that delightful little clip ball through for Cyriel Dessers, a chance he had just before his goal when he hit the post. So maybe it could be a silver lining to this cloud for Philippe Clement, that these young players may get more game time. Bailey Rice in particular, I know a lot of Rangers fans are very excited to see more of.
He's going to have to rotate this squad, and as we saw last night, they're almost having to rotate the positions they're used to. As you said, James Tavernier playing at centre-back, and we spoke to Robin Proper, and well, he was full of praise for his captain's performance last night.
Yeah, you see with this quality and with this experience, he can play everywhere, I think. He already managed to right winger, from right fullback to centre defender, so he can play that. He has a lot of experience, and you see it in the end also with this great pass. It's big quality next to me, of course.
Whilst it was a disappointing result for Rangers, for Manchester United, it was almost a must-win for them last night. I think a lot of the chat before this game was the amount of pressure that Ruben Amorim was under there, the powder keg that was building amongst the squad. But a win last night just maybe eases the pressure a little bit, and Bruno Fernandes stepping up when it mattered most.
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously it was a huge result in terms of their Europa League standing up to 4th now and looking set to get that automatic qualification to bypass the playoff round. But you could just see that atmosphere within the stadium when that goal went in from Cyriel Dessers. These fans, they weren't disappointed. It was almost not again for this Manchester United team. That defence looks shaky. Harry Maguire has to do better for me in that defensive third. But now they've got that win under the belt. They end that kind of losing streak that they've had at home, that defeat against Brighton. And now they'll look to push forward, going back into the lead. And that's where the form has got to improve. Europe is a good one. That's their last chance of Champions League football, maybe winning the Europa League this season. And now they've got to perform in the league. Talking about Champions League football, we'll switch to our second game of the week, and that is Celtic versus Young Boys. Celtic, well, they left it late, but they have now qualified for the knockout phases of the Champions League. Blair, it wasn't going their way in that first half, an incredible amount of chances, but they finally got their stroke of luck at the end.
Yep, and I think you need to make your own luck in this competition, and I think that Celtic just continuing to keep pushing Adamida. Eventually, it comes off from there when he gets that goal, and he's another bit of a beleaguered striker who's went through a little bit of a tough time, but again, being there in that big moment, it will do wonders to lift his confidence and lift morale towards him amongst the Celtic support as well. Celtic Park absolutely rocking from the first minute to the 90th minute. Obviously, we've been down here this week, but we spoke to a few people at the game on Tuesday night. They said it was absolutely electric and wonderful for Celtic to make it into the next stage. And of course, not quite finished yet. They do have Aston Villa next week down in Birmingham. Aston Villa coming off a couple of difficult results themselves, losing to Monaco in the week. So Celtic could fancy themselves to go even one further and potentially break into that top 8.
It's going to be a big game for Celtic next week against Aston Villa, but obviously, as has been widely reported this week, these transfer news, Kyogo leaving the club for Rennes, maybe a return for Jota, but he won't be able to play next week given the Champions League. So for Adamida, I think that bit of confidence, own goal, who really cares? He needed that confidence. It's going to be a big second half of the season. If Celtic do dip back into the market, well, we'll have to wait and see in the last, 7 or 8 days of the window. Do you think he's got enough to be Celtic's main man up top?
I think he'll certainly grasp the opportunity. It's time to grasp the nettle for Adamida. Kyogo leaving, I think, took us all by surprise when that news broke the other night. And I would expect Celtic to dip into the market again to find another striker. But Adamida, he's been given this opportunity now, and it's up to him to take it.
Celtic, they've struggled in this competition. They'll be delighted in recent years. They'll be delighted this year that they've been able to get out of it. And we spoke to Brendan Rodgers after the game, and he says they've had their critics, but they finally come through it.
Yeah, no, clearly it's obviously a privilege to be here and manage here. There's been so many critics of Celtic at this level, and there's no doubt it is a challenge at the level. But the players have stepped up. They've been absolutely superb over the course of these 7 games. The setback that we had in Dortmund, we learnt from, and now the players on a night like tonight, they get their reward.
For Celtic, they came into this new format with a lot of optimism, a lot of hope, talk about maybe a generous draw. But you've got to perform on the biggest stage. Just one defeat in that night against Borussia Dortmund and then undefeated in the rest. You look at last night, for example, Kyogo, a hat-trick of disallowed goals and Engels missing a penalty. Looking at Kyogo, if the deal is to be confirmed, which we are expecting either later today or early tomorrow morning, how big a hole do you think he leaves in the club?
Well, I think 85 goals, I believe it is, for Kyogo in a Celtic jersey, and I think he's been an unprecedented success. He has won the hearts of all of the Celtic support, and he's been a wonderful signing for Celtic. He will go as a cult hero, as a legend at Parkhead, and it's going to be a difficult job to replace him. I know perhaps this season he maybe hasn't performed up to the high standards he himself has set himself, but his goal record over the last few years has been sublime. And as I said, I do expect Celtic to go back into the market. I know Jota is reportedly on his way back. Brendan Rodgers confirmed earlier this afternoon, but we've spoken about Adamida. I do think they need more options up front, and I wouldn't be surprised if Celtic go back into the market this window for a number 9.
Well, Celtic have qualified for the next stage of the Champions League, but 2 teams who are still battling just to make the qualification, well, that's Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City. What a game we were treated to the other night, Blair.
Yes, obviously we're down in Manchester, and the other Manchester side, they've been making headlines of their very own. They are on the brink in the Champions League. Now, they are playing Club Brugge next. They just need a win in that game to secure themselves a Champions League playoff place, but they have not made it easy for themselves by any stretch. It looked as though they were on easy street the other night. They were 2-0 up at PSG. PSG themselves have had their troubles, and then as Man City, it seems to happen so often right now, it just started unravelling. Once the first goal for PSG went in, you're thinking, oh, it's going to happen again. As you said, these Man United fans, when Dessers scored last night, they're thinking, not again. When Man City, when they conceded that first goal, they're thinking, not again, not again. The second, the third, and then the fourth went in. But a well-deserved victory for Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, it's quite interesting watching it down here in Manchester. A few Manchester City fans in the pubs. They go 2-0 up, jubilation. 3 goals later, and well, they can't quite believe their own eyes. With Manchester City, I just feel like if they can get through Club Brugge, a tricky team, they're no write-off Club Brugge, but if they can get through and kind of rebuild, they're still a team with that much quality that they could even go quite deep in this competition.
Yeah, but they're certainly going to have to improve on what they've seen the other night, and I think the manager Pep Guardiola admitted himself that it just wasn't good enough.
They were better. People suffer and the players suffer, and they were better. They were better in intensity to win duels, and of course we found our moment with 0-2 for the goals. But the first half they have one chance, they have 2 chances clear. When they had the ball, they drop us, but also we could have the ball, always we created problems to them. But at the 0-2 and especially 1-2, we could not play.
PSG, another fantastic performance in a tricky season for them, but they're always looked entertaining in the Champions League, and they are another team who this January have expanded their firepower, bringing in Kvaratskhelia from Napoli. It's a really good signing for me, but it's not particularly where I would think PSG need to improve upon it. They're another team that I look at and think they need a central striker, they need a number 9. One of the key players the other evening, Bradley Barcola, he is great coming in off that left-hand side, drifting in, making so much happen for PSG. That is Kvaratskhelia position, so it'll be interesting to see how that front 3 works, especially with Ousmane Dembele looking so hot on the right hand side as well.
Right, Blair, that's our featured games out of the way for this week's Champions League and Europa League, but I want to know your special mention, that kind of player or that team that really caught your eye this week.
Well, I know there have been a few incredible performances, some of which I know you want to touch on in a little bit, but for me, I'm going to say Bologna. And our very own Lewis Ferguson, just back from a massive long-term injury, he played a part the other night as they secured their first Champions League win, coming back from a goal down against Borussia Dortmund. An excellent result for them that they can hold and take something out of a troubled Champions League campaign, but getting a win in Europe is never something to be looked down upon.
I've got to talk about Barcelona versus Benfica, arguably the game of the week, you could say. We were driving down here to Manchester on Tuesday night. We've got the radio on, 3-1 up. We're like, oh, well, that's that game all over. We switch it back on about half an hour later, and it's 4-4, and then you hear that goal from Rafinha, 5-4. He's been incredible for Barcelona this season, coming up so many times with the important goals in the Champions League. And one man we've got to talk about, well, it's not really anyone you'll know, it's one random punter. I saw this on Twitter, quite extraordinary, a £5 bet put on at half-time, 3 of the teams in the Champions League all losing, incredible odds, and it won £12,000, Blair. Not a bad way to start your Tuesday night, and it all relied on that Rafinha goal.
Yep, you absolutely dream of bets like that, Patrick. I think everyone gets maybe one of those in their lifetime, if you even back it or not. Barcelona, however, they are one of my favourite teams to watch this season. I've said it on this show before, they're just so entertaining. Rafinha, in particular, can you believe that Barcelona wanted to sell him? They wanted to get rid of him last season.
Leeds United got rid of him.
Leeds United got rid of him. Barcelona wanted rid of him. This man must be thinking, what do I need to do to maintain somewhere at a club? But he's been exceptional this year, wearing the captain's armband in a lot of the games. And watching the highlights of that Benfica game, Benfica could have won it themselves. Well, at 4-4, and Rafinha goes up the park, puts it in the net for 5-4. An absolutely incredible game. And I wouldn't rule out Barcelona. I know they're maybe just a couple of points off the pace in the league. But in this Champions League campaign, they look so entertaining and anything can happen. They are a must-watch for me, Patrick.
Absolutely. Well, sadly, that's all we've got time for here on the European Football Show. If you've never seen us before, every game week we'll be back giving you a rundown of all of the Champions League and Europa League fixtures, and that will all kick off once again next week when we get into the final rounds of the group stage. You don't want to miss it, so stay with us on PRZ Soccer's YouTube channel, and hopefully Storm Airwin isn't causing you too much trouble back up there in Glasgow. From myself, Patrick, and Blair Malloy, thanks for joining us.
We'll hopefully be somewhere warmer next week, Patrick.